They can't get nukes. That famous escalator ride down, immediately said, and if I'm president, Iran won't get nukes. And before that, on X, saying Iran cannot get a nuke, 60 days talking, negotiating. They weren't playing ball. Time is up. You can disagree with it. But to suggest that that's a betrayal.
No, I disagree completely. And I think that Donald Trump also bragged about not getting us in any new wars and bragged about ending wars, many of which he didn't end. I'm on the exact point that you just asked me about, Stephen. You're claiming I'm filibustering. You're interrupting every time I speak.
Hey fam, welcome back to One and Done. We've got another great debate for you. This one between Dave Smith and Stephen Crowder. Dave Smith thinks that Donald Trump should be impeached over the strike on Iran. He claims he started a new war and didn't get approval from Congress. Now, I always watch the debate first and then do the intro, and I'll be interested to see if you guys go into this debate thinking one thing and then coming out thinking another, because that's what happened to me. So before we find out who won and who got done, don't forget to hit that like, smash the subscribe, ring the notification bell, and let's roll that tape.
I think that you and I agree on a whole lot more than we disagree, which is why I was surprised at some of your takes. For example, like I think on foreign aid, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on any of this or you disagree, I don't think we should be providing foreign aid to anybody, Israel included, as well as all the surrounding nations. I think we fund all sides of this war. I think we do that a whole lot. Stop all of it. Let the chips fall where they may. I agree with you that no one should have secret nukes. I think that Israel's nukes are so secret that Dave Smith and Stephen Crowder can talk about it on a podcast, but I don't think that anyone should be able to have some kind of a different protocol on nukes. AIPAC, I've said they should go screw themselves with a wire brush. I don't like any lobbying group that acts outside of America's interests. I think we would agree on most of that. And as I understand it, you're pro-life. You've talked about that. I know when we test called, you have a cute little guy about the same age as mine, and I think that fundamentally changes you. All of these things, we'd be aligned. This is why I'm such a universe apart, where when I invited you on the show, where you called for impeaching President Trump. That's definitely a divergence, and I don't see how that's better for America or the movement if we agree on so much. Could you, the floor is yours, sir.
Okay, well, yeah, I think I certainly would agree with you on all the things that you outlined there. But I think I would go a bit further and say that not only am I very critical of the foreign aid to Israel or critical of AIPAC, but I'm also very critical of the neoconservatives who are essentially, a core constituency in the Israel lobby. I'm very critical of the Republican Party that essentially allowed the neocons to become the drivers of U.S. foreign policy in the George W. Bush administration, and many people who still have those same tendencies. I mean, the Mark Levins and Ted Cruz's and people like that, well, maybe not officially, technically neocons, certainly are in effect no different from them. And so in terms of, one of the things in terms of me calling for Trump's impeachment, one of the things that's interesting to me is that I got so many people as a response to that who essentially, were saying Ben Shapiro and Josh Hammer and all these guys criticizing me. Look at him. He's betrayed Donald Trump. All the neocons, Mark Levin, the never Trumpers. The original 2016 never Trumpers. Like, I still remember that copy of National Review. I'm sure you do too. They all said, but no, look, to me, I don't have any loyalty to any politician because I'm a free man in the United States of America.
Sure.
Donald Trump launched a war of choice, a war of aggression on behalf of a foreign country while we were in the middle of negotiations with said country. I thought it was an unbelievably reckless decision. Thankfully, at least for now, it didn't turn into a catastrophe like many of the other conflicts have. And Trump deserves certainly a good portion of the credit for that. But no, I don't take that back at all. I believe that America should only fight wars when America is threatened. And I don't believe in this adventurism, which I think is absolutely crazy, which continues under the Trump administration, continued under the Biden and obviously the Obama and Bush administrations. I'm against all of this stuff. So yeah, I was loudly in opposition to the Iran war.
Now, actually, I agree with Dave Smith. I was actually a little worried about what was going to be the outcome there. But obviously, Donald Trump has the intelligence, so he can weigh up the pros and cons. And he felt as though that a stealthy attack at the end of the negotiations would have worked. Now, the neocons would have had you in endless wars. Now, I don't even know if there was any casualties from that strike. It was very successful from all reports. So yes, he does deserve credit. But like Dave, I was a little worried. But impeachable?
And I think that's fair. I think some of what you just said I agree with. I disagree with some of the premises. But it sounds like you're saying you still support the idea, or did at that point in time, the impeachment of Donald Trump. And this is where I think we diverge. And I know that you've also pointed this out. And by the way, I think rightfully so. You're a libertarian, but you are not an open borders libertarian. You've talked about the need for borders, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Because I always said, small L libertarianish, but I've always labeled myself conservative. I've never agreed with him on that. Were you ever at any point, like the Reason magazine sort of open borders approach to libertarianism?
Yeah, I mean, I think like when I first became a libertarian, I was that was probably my default position, is like, just allow freedom of movement. The government shouldn't really be doing anything to nonviolent people. But it was actually libertarian thinkers who convinced me the other way, most notably Murray Rothbard and Hans Hermann Hoppe. And essentially, I just got convinced by their argument that it's not, in fact, the correct libertarian position. Like, it doesn't follow from libertarian principles that government property ought to be available to the entire world. In fact, what follows from libertarian principles is really more taxation is theft, that the government robbed from the domestic population in order to fund and maintain government property, and therefore it should probably approximate what the domestic population would like to be done with it. Right. If that makes sense.
So why didn't you want Biden to be impeached?
I don't know that that's mainstream libertarianism, but I think that your view is the correct one, and I agree with you. To be clear,
listen,
but I do want to.
Can I just very quick just say that it is true that there are organizations like Cato and Reason and stuff like that that are more open borders. Yeah. But it's also true that Ron Paul, I think, is probably the most mainstream libertarian ever, and he completely agrees with border restrictions. So it's debatable what the mainstream libertarian position is.
Okay, but I think yours is correct in that. And because a lot of people see libertarians, and of course they see the foolishness that they see on a national platform of open borders, a lot of libertarians, and go, like, you're not that. I also want to be clear, too, to be as charitable as possible. I hate the word, but just to be as sincere as possible. There are people out there, and I know that you've appeared at TPUSA, and Charlie Kirk talked about this. There are people out there who hate Jews. I do not consider, and for anyone watching in chat, I do not consider you amongst them at all, to be clear. So I don't want this to turn into Jewsburg. I don't think that's the case. I think there are those people. And because I invited you, Candace Owens, some other people on the show, you're the only one who had the balls to show up, which I appreciate. I don't want people lumping you in that category. I think you have legitimate grievances with the government of Israel, and that does not make somebody anti-Semitic. I just say this because I want to cut off at the pass. People going, he hates Jews. There are people going, he's a shill for the Jews. It's like, well, okay, none of those things are true. Going back to the impeachment, that was the original question. So you stand by it. Here's the thing. Being real world conservative, right wing, small L libertarian, what mechanism would you have in place for that? And how is that better for America? Because obviously, even if we get to a mechanism, you'd lame duck the most effective president of our lifetime. I think it's hard to argue the most anti-war president of our lifetime, and you'd end up with 4 years of like a Biden or a Gavin Newsom or a Whitmer. That's how it plays out in the real world. You okay with it? I'm not. That's where I disagree.
Well, I think, first of all, J.D. Vance would become the president if Donald Trump was removed. But again,
more hawkish than Trump, though, so it doesn't fix the problem.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that. And I don't know if I agree with you that, I mean, look, yeah, if you're comparing Donald Trump to Obama and George W. Bush and Joe Biden, like, yes, okay, he's preferable to them. But again, I'm just making the point.
I think it's, and I think we have to, I just think this is an important difference. That's where I think we separate. I am comparing him to all presidents before him and the alternatives. And even if J.D. Vance becomes president, yeah, I know it goes through the lineage Vance, and then I believe it's Johnson, Rubio. It would be a lame duck presidency, right? Because the public would just see this man's impeached for the third time, corruption, and it would be waiting out the clock until there's another election.
Now, this is why I sort of have a love-hate relationship with Dave Smith, because sometimes he comes across like a conservative, other times he comes across like a real progressive. So, for instance, progressives love tearing things down. And that's basically what he wants to do. He wants to tear down Donald Trump. He wants to impeach him for the strike on Iran, which he's calling a war. I think it's more of a strategic strike than anything. And not only that, a successful strategic strike. And once he gets rid of Trump, he thinks it's going to be utopia. Or if you're comparing him to Biden, if you're comparing him to Obama, well, who else we're going to compare him to? They were the latest presidents. And we can go by what they've done. We saw it. He's mentioned J.D. Vance, who I think probably would make a good president. Maybe Rubio, but we don't know, do we?
Well, I mean, first of all, the first two times Donald Trump was impeached, he was impeached for complete nonsense. And so it would be a little bit different to have a president impeached for launching an illegal war. That is a very different thing. But I think the more important point here is that, look, obviously there's no mechanism for me to have Donald Trump impeached. I'm not a member of Congress who's introducing articles of impeachment. I'm a commentator who was on record supporting Donald Trump in 2024. And so when the war first broke out, what I was doing was saying in the loudest possible way that there's a huge group of people here who supported you, who are not only upset about this, but are repudiating everything about you, are criticizing you in the strongest possible language. Now, I am one of, in terms of like the Trump base of influential support, I'm one of the smaller members who was criticizing him. I mean, he had Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and even Charlie Kirk, who didn't exactly criticize him, but certainly was critical of the idea of getting into a regime change war with Iran. And I felt like at the time, like,
but did they call for impeachment and execution?
Did I call for execution?
You have. You said that Donald Trump should be buried beneath the prison for war crimes.
Oh, yeah, he is. Okay. Well, that's a separate thing. But what I called for in this case was
But did they do anything comparable?
Well, hold on.
Hold on, Dave. You tend to filibuster, and I want to stick to this just because this is, outside of that, I don't think we have that big of a disagreement, right?
Well, I don't think I'm filibustering. I was just trying to finish my point.
Okay. So I think you've already described, to answer right, the mechanism. The mechanism in place would be Congress, correct? I'm not saying that you do it yourself, Dave. But like you said, you were using an influential platform. There were some other people, and largely the left, who were calling for impeachment. So I think that still you stand by it. But the real world fallout of that is far worse for the United States and for the Keep America, Make America Great, America First movement. And that's where I think we diverge. And when I see you saying that, first off, it gives me pause. And I only see you just mentioned those people, and the left calling for his impeachment. And you say, well, yeah, he's better than these other presidents. Okay, so what would be better if you're calling for the impeachment, and it could be facetious, the execution of Donald Trump? That seems pretty extreme, and it seems like a big difference.
I mean, again, you can say I'm filibustering, but let me explain my position here. Is that the point I was making was that so many of Donald Trump's most important, and there's really never been a moment in my lifetime like that before. There's really never been, I can't think of any time where George W. Bush did something and Sean Hannity and Bill O'Reilly were just like, that's it. We're done supporting him. And Obama never lost Rachel Maddow or something like that. And I think the fact that so many of us stood up against that was, in terms of, like, to your point, in terms of the real world, what can we actually do? I think that was the most effective thing that we could do at that point, was just to make it very clear that if you do get us into another catastrophic war here, you're going to lose a huge portion of your support. This is the only incentive that politicians respond to. Okay. Now, in terms of your point about me saying
Can I address that?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So, and I know that you and I think we both share a fundamental hatred of mischaracterizations. Hopefully, you don't think that I've done that here. I've asked these questions fairly. I think that's a mischaracterization, and I think it was at large of Donald Trump from you. I think to say that he should be impeached based on a betrayal, when we probably don't have a president with a more clear track record on any issue than Donald Trump on Iran. If I said Israel, I meant to say Iran, where he said they can't get nukes. That famous escalator ride down, immediately said, and if I'm president, Iran won't get nukes. And before that, on X, saying Iran cannot get a nuke, 60 days talking, negotiating. They weren't playing ball. Time is up. You can disagree with it. But to suggest that that's a betrayal, I would say that's the exact opposite. People maybe need to do the research on the candidate who they're supporting, in your case, endorsing, electing. He was very consistent about that.
No, I disagree completely. And I think that Donald Trump also bragged about not getting us in any new wars and bragged about ending wars, many of which he didn't end. But no, I mean, look, there's a major difference between just saying Iran won't get nukes, which could mean anything, and saying I will launch a war against Iran if they enrich up to 60% and are still willing to negotiate down the enrichment. I'm sorry, those are just very different things.
Well, you called for his impeachment before he launched the strike, and we're not at war. But Dave, you've been talking. Hold on a second. You always do this where you say, let me finish a sentence, but then you address a point and then scattershot 5 different points. You called for this before.
I'm on the exact point that you just asked me about, Stephen. You're claiming I'm filibustering. You're interrupting every time I speak.
Damn, the wheels are starting to fall off this one.
No, I'm not, Dave. I want to address that one point, and then we'll go back. We're not at war. You called for his impeachment before the strike. I do think if you're talking about, what other option outside of diplomacy, because you said there are many other options, it could mean anything. Donald Trump, again, in context, if you look at the context, said it was a huge failure, Barack Obama's policy on Iran. He said that you cannot set red lines that you do not enforce, and I will enforce my red lines. Donald Trump was very clear. He set a red line, 60 days are up, so we've tried the diplomacy. Well, what other mechanisms are in place to prevent it?
Donald Trump, this is what he's doing. He's just parenting. That's all he's doing. He's redlining. He's saying, "Hey, I'm going to give you the warning, and that's the red line there. Don't cross that red line because you don't know what's going to happen on the other side." And Iran messed around and found out. And if you look at the bigger picture here, other countries are looking at him saying, "Hey, this guy is serious when it comes to deal making." Now, it's not necessarily going to go in and do a stealthy bomb mission on another country, but what it does send is a message of leadership and peace through strength. He gave Iran the opportunity to stop their enrichment program, and they indicated they weren't going to do anything but to carry on. So it is what it is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't think, again, if you're saying that enriching up to 60% was the big problem, then the JCPOA wasn't a failure. They weren't enriching anywhere near to that level until Donald Trump tore up the agreement, excuse me, or walked away, pulled America out of the agreement. And yes, he arbitrarily set a timeline of 60 days, but there were meetings scheduled for the next day or 2 days later after when Israel first struck them and Donald Trump walked away. So the alternative was obviously to keep negotiating. Look, Iran was there to negotiate down the 60% enrichment. They had been down to 3 to 5% when America was good standing members of the JCPOA.
But Dave, how many years do you want to go on with negotiations? These negotiations with Iran seem to be never ending. Now, should they or shouldn't they have nukes? That's a different argument. I'm just arguing about the actual negotiation tactics.
Obvious alternative would have been to keep negotiating.
So you believe that it's a more effective form of world leadership in an impeachable offense to set a date, a timeline, say last call. I've counted to 3, count to 3, and then say I didn't mean it?
No, I'm saying.
But that would be what he would do, effectively, right? If he,
yes.
Yeah. I think that's silly for a president to do that.
Right. But that's not what I said. But you think what you said is silly. Okay. But yes. What I'm saying.
No, he did say, right, we're 60 days up. Was Iran negotiating? Did Iran come to the negotiating table? Did Iran allow inspections?
Finish whenever you want to, and then I'll try to.
Oh, I asked you that. Were the 60 days up? Did Donald Trump count to 3?
Yeah.
So he should continue negotiating after he sets a red line.
Yeah, well, no, Stephen. It's a little bit more. It's a little bit more than 1 cent.
Okay.
It's a little bit more than 1 centimeter deep. Okay.
Please enlighten me as shallow as I am.
Dude, it's like you just.
I know. Go ahead.
No, just a lot of people told me that, watch out, he's going to be constantly interrupting you, but I didn't realize it was actually going to be like this. Okay, so Donald Trump, what happened was Donald Trump had signaled at the beginning of the negotiations that he would be open to some enrichment, but that he wanted it to be brought down. And then Mark Levin and all of the hawks, they insisted that you put in the poison pill of absolutely no enrichment of uranium whatsoever. And he went along with that. And Iran was like, yeah, and then he set the 60 days. Now, look, I think it was a bad move to ever put that poison pill in and to ever set those 60 days. But yes, at that point, once you've done that, diplomacy in this case was obviously preferable to force. And I think, in fact, probably we are in a more likely position now that Iran breaks out and tries to get a nuclear weapon than we were if he had continued the negotiations. But certainly you exhaust the negotiations. You try diplomacy as much as you can. War should always be an absolute last option. And he didn't exhaust that. Instead, he supported attacking them in the middle of the negotiations. That is dishonorable. It is unethical, and it's bad leadership.
Yeah, I don't think it's dishonorable. I don't think it's unethical, and I don't think it's bad leadership. I think it would be bad leadership to allow a country to completely flagrantly disregard their own agreements, to not honor their word, to have international oversight committees that you cite, Dave, as the gold standard, saying, yeah, they're only a few weeks away from this kind of dangerous uranium enrichment, and then to say, you know what, let's continue diplomacy. So here's my question to you. Because you said impeach, you said war crimes, and it sounds to me like there's no president in our lifetime who you wouldn't bury beneath the prison for war crimes. Can you name one?
No, I think every president in my lifetime has been a war criminal. That's right.
Okay, so every president in your lifetime has been a war criminal. Impeach Donald Trump beneath the prison.
It's part of being a world empire, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, at least Dave Smith's been consistent. If he's been consistent, he's been consistent. So you can't, complain about that. Now, whether I think the situation's the same across multiple presidents, that I don't think.
I don't think Donald Trump is a neocon. As a matter of fact, I think he's the least neocon of all the presidents that we've had. We might just have a disagreement on that, but I definitely think
he's a neocon.
Well, you said your gripe was with neocons and your criticism of Donald Trump. I have criticisms of Donald Trump. H-1Bs, big one. I went in hard on that, for crying out loud. When you talk about the Epstein debacle, unveiling that, Pam Bondi shouldn't have a job.
Agree.
The Chinese student foreign visas, right? I think that's a big problem. I criticize him on a regular basis, calling for impeachment, and buried beneath the prison when this man has ended more wars than any other president, at least that I can recall. Pretty close. He's ended many wars. The only one that he hasn't ended is Ukraine.
Which ones did he end?
We're talking about conflicts right now. I mean, for 12-day war is done, if you want to, because you've attributed that to Donald Trump and Israel. I mean, we now have a ceasefire. Before that, we had the Abraham Accords. I mean, if you look at the invasions that have taken place.
None of those ended a war. The Abraham Accords didn't end any wars.
So if we're looking at the other examples in the past where you look at invasions from Russia when they got froggy, obviously they tend to favor Democrat administrations. I think he's been very non-interventionist, not an isolationist. And I think that Thailand, Cambodia is one that comes to mind. India, Pakistan.
Thailand and Cambodia, I saw a video where they had 75,000 monks who wanted Donald Trump to get the Nobel Peace Prize.
None of those count. Israel, Gaza, India, Pakistan.
No, it's not that none of them count, Stephen. It's just
Azerbaijan, Armenia. I know that because I have a lot of Armenian friends. I mean, you keep interrupting me. Do none of these count?
I don't think any of them are wars that Donald Trump was conducting that he ended. I mean, Donald Trump, look, in his first 4 years, he inherited the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan. We had troops in Syria. We had troops in Somalia. He talked about pulling them out. And in fact, I think he was the major reporting about him being lied to about the number of troops in Syria, but he never did get them out. He kept the war going in Afghanistan for 4 years, surged it, even though he knew it was an unwinnable war. I will give him credit, he eventually wrote the plans that did get out, but it was for his second term. And then, of course, he left it to Joe Biden to completely fumble the entire thing. There. He kept the war in the Saudi invasion of Yemen going his entire first 4 years. He just broke records for the most strikes in Somalia in any year. We've been bombing them since 2002, I think. I mean, so I don't know. And he's backed Israel his entire time in their destruction of Gaza, and he's failed to stop the war in Ukraine. So, like, again, his rhetoric is certainly better. And there are a few things I could look to that I would point to, go, hey, he did a really good job there. But I don't know. I don't really agree with your overall characterization.
Well, it's not that you disagree with my overall characterization. Your question was, name me any wars he's ended. And then you move the goalposts, right?
No. When I said wars he's ended, I didn't mean like he picked up a phone call and then a conflict like between two other parties. I'm saying wars that
But bruh, it's called influence. He's got influence. He has influence. He's moving the needle all around the world. Doesn't matter if he picks up a phone. Was he influential in that war ceasing, stopping, ceasefire, saving lives? Yes. Doesn't matter if it's on the phone, he's on a plane. Doesn't matter. If it aids and abets a peace deal, you have to give him credit.
America's been involved in
diplomacy doesn't count there.
Or fighting.
So none of those would count.
No, I'm not saying it doesn't count. I'm saying it's not exactly a war he ended.
Well, I want to have this conversation in good faith. And if you say, name me any wars he's ended, and I go, okay, Thailand, Cambodia, Israel, Gaza, ceasefire, Armenia, Azerbaijan, you could argue, hold on a second. You could argue that Yemen, really a proxy war with Iran, which kind of brings us back to the initial point. It's certainly more than other presidents. So picking up the phone and engaging in diplomacy, which I thought you would be supportive of, he's done it more than other presidents. And I would say he's set apart pretty significantly, which is why I don't want to impeach him. I don't think that would make America stronger, more effective. I think it would make us weaker. That's really the crux of this. I think he's better than other presidents. I think he's the most effective president of our lifetime. And I don't think it's an impeachable offense. He asked me which wars did he end. I just gave you a list. Do those count?
Well, it's again not okay. Look, if you're talking about the war between Israel, if you can call it a war, Israel's destruction of Gaza, yes, after funding and facilitating the whole thing for his entire second term of his presidency, he's gotten a very loosely holding together ceasefire as of right now. So yes, as I've said on my show and said publicly, I give him credit for that. That part was better. The funding it for the his entire presidency, which you seem to agree with, that part was wrong.
I agree with the funding of it, you're saying?
No, I said, which you already said.
Oh, yeah, I agree with you. Yes, sorry.
You agree with me
no,
on that.
I'm just making, I agree with you. Yeah.
So, okay.
You and I share that same common ground, but I just think it's important.
Okay.
Dave, you said interrupting. I've got a timer clock going. I don't think you're going to like the way it looks. Okay.
All right,
so I was listing the other examples of Donald Trump being a non-interventionist in comparison to Biden, for example. Even just using your example there, talk about funding the war, Israel, Gaza. Ceasefire's pretty damn quick into Donald Trump's presidency. And I'm not saying it's perfect. I think it's better than no ceasefire.
Facts.
I think picking up the phone and ending conflicts is better than not, but we still find ourselves at the intersect of impeachment. And so, let's move on, you stand by it. I believe that the impeachment, which you called for before the surgical strike on Iranian enrichment facilities, was based on him starting another illegal baseless war, right? That would be the reason for it?
Yeah, sure. A war of choice, a war of aggression, an illegal war. The Constitution is very clear. You need Congress to declare a war. Every single war since World War II has been illegal. And there was absolutely no need to launch those strikes. They pose no threat to us.
Okay. So that's where I would disagree, but I also understand that you're consistent, and I do appreciate it. You think that every war since World War II is illegal, every military strike, and every president is a war criminal who should be executed. I don't think that's realistic. And if you look at the War Powers Act, it delegates the authority exclusively to the president to make that kind of a call, and they have the right to withdraw.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, again, to be clear, I'm not arguing that that's realistic, but in the same sense that, like, you might say there should be no abortions. And I could respond to you and say, hey, that's not realistic. And that is true. It's not realistic that at any point soon in the United States of America, there'll be no abortions. But that's what's right. And so I'm just staking out my claim of what I believe is right.
Right. Okay. So you mean morally you would like to see him impeached?
I mean, morally, I think it's immoral to launch wars of aggression and choice is what I mean.
Okay. So, but then you said that that would be unconstitutional in an illegal war. Obviously, the Supreme Court disagrees. Obviously, every other president who was far more hawkish disagrees. And obviously, even right now, when you're talking about Democrats who love, I wish you and I, come on, you got to agree with this. I wish you and I had a passion for anything as much as these people have a passion for trying to impeach your political theater against Donald Trump. And that didn't really even gain any steam, because no one aside from Dave Smith and a few other people think this was World War III or an unconstitutional strike.
When did I say it was World War III, Stephen?
You talked about escalating this again back on social media, saying this could lead us into World War III. That's why you wanted to impeach it.
When did I say? Please show my specific quote about World War III and what I said.
I will find it and I can provide it publicly.
No, because I hear a lot of people saying this to me, but I don't remember saying it. So
okay.
When did I say?
You didn't think it was going to
III?
escalate global conflict?
Oh, I was concerned about escalation, but that's a very different thing than saying this is going to lead to World War III.
Okay, well, I'll rephrase then, because you did say you didn't call for it. I'm like, well, bearing beneath the prison is execution, right? I don't want to do the wordplay thing. If you didn't say World War III, I apologize. It would be other people. I'll clarify that.
No. I'm not listen, I'm not saying you are lying. I'm just pointing out I don't think I said that.
Well, can we agree that that was a tenor and tone for a lot of people calling for impeaching Donald Trump? Escalation, global conflict. Right.
Yeah, there were a lot of people concerned about that.
Yes,
sure.
Exactly. Is that where we are?
Are we in World War III?
No, I didn't say World War III. Has it escalated or has it de-escalated? Because I'm looking at it. Hold on a second. I said don't impeach because I actually think that our only chance at de-escalation is a president like Trump. And I think at this point he wasn't impeached. I think an unbelievable surgical strike, agree or disagree with it, was conducted with no collateral damage, with planes out over the ocean before they woke up in the morning, and no one even said a word. That's why they couldn't retaliate, because they have no way to. I think the 12-day war ended. I think we have a ceasefire agreement in Israel and Gaza, and I think we're better off. I think objectively there's been de-escalation as opposed to escalation, and I don't think that's by accident. And I think if we impeach him and we follow that doctrine, I think we end up in a much worse place.
All right, we're going to leave it there. That was a very interesting video. I thought I would vehemently disagree with Dave Smith, but in the end, I sort of appreciated his consistency. Now, do I agree with him that Donald Trump should be impeached? Hell nah. And then who are we going to end up with if he's impeached? Now, I don't think it's an impeachable offense. Now, if it led to World War III, I might feel different. I think Stephen Crowder pinned Dave Smith down on a few things. However, I do think Dave Smith did show some consistency. Now, whether that consistency means that he's right, that's where I probably have to disagree. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Let me know what you think. Who won the debate? Or did they each score points in various areas? Now, before we dip, don't forget to hit that like, smash the subscribe, ring the notification bell. Your support really helps the channel. We really appreciate it. And I hope to see you in the next video.